A guten Erev Shabbos. This past few weeks, we spoke about food each Shabbat morning, and we seem to have a good time. No doubt someone somewhere has published a Parsha cookbook with a different recipe based on the weekly reading. Baked apples for Adam and Eve, lentil stew for Jacob and Esau, shawarma for the Paschal sacrifice. It's got to all be out there somewhere. So, continuing on that theme, there is one brief mention of food in this week's Sedra in Vayishlach. It's not exactly in the flow of the story, but it's very much connected to the action of what takes place. It's actually a major component of the rules of kashrut, kosher eating, and this topic gets an entire chapter in the Talmud to describe the concept and the mitzvah, and actually has quite a major impact on our eating habits more than at first glance. The mitzvah mentioned here is to avoid gid hanashe, the sciatic nerve in an animal. And we learn about it right after Yaakov, right after Jacob wrestles with the angel who changes his name to Yisrael. The angel explains, Ki sarisa im elakim v'anashim v'tuchal, because you have wrestled with God and with man and you have prevailed, that's where we get our name, Yisrael, Israel. 2 verses before that, we learned that in this wrestling match, Yaakov sustained an injury, and our food-related mitzvah is a direct outcome of that. Jacob was left alone, Yaakov was left alone, and a man, says the Torah, an angel, a man, wrestled with him until the break of dawn, says in the second aliyah. When he perceived that he could not overcome him, he struck him in the socket of his hip, Vayar ki lo yachol lo, v'yagia b'chaf yerechai, v'teka kaf yerech Yaakov behe'abek imo. Yaakov, Jacob's hip socket, was dislocated as he wrestled with this angel. And then the blessing, and then the sun rose for Jacob as he went off, limping on his wounded hip. The encounter left him lame in one leg, apparently. So then the Torah tells us as follows. It says, therefore the children of Israel are not to eat that sinew on the hip socket to this day, because he struck Jacob's hip socket on that sinew. Al kain lo yochlu bnei Yisrael as gid hanasheh ad hayom hazeh ki naga b'chaf yerech Yaakov begid hanasheh. So, in order for beef to be kosher, it has to have this sciatic nerve, the gid hanasheh, removed. Rabbinically, they also have to remove the peroneal nerve. Every bit of these nerves has to be removed, along with all the fat around the sciatic nerve. And there's a set of 6 nerves that look like strings. Other veins are also removed. So this is the topic of the chapter 7 of Tractate Chulin in the Talmud, when the title of that chapter is Gid HaNasheh. The person who's trained and qualified to do this removing, this very careful de-veining and de-nerving of the meat is called a menaker, or a treberer in Yiddish. We had a neighbor in Baltimore once who had this skill, this training of porging, as they write it in English, if that helps. It's hard work, very time-consuming, as you can imagine. So, oftentimes, kosher meat producers will simply sell the entire hindquarters of the animal to non-kosher producers, rather than spend the time and money to have a trained expert do all that porging, all that removal. Now, you might be thinking, who cares? Well, meat lovers who eat kosher care, that's who. If you don't sell the hindquarters of beef to the kosher consumer, what are we missing out on if we don't have that? To name a few, the sirloin tip, the eye of round, the porterhouse steak, tournedos, and filet mignon. Only, according to what they say, the most sought after and priciest, allegedly the tastiest steaks to be found. So you will find that in some communities they do what it takes to get these to the kosher market. In England, the UK, it seems like they really go the distance to make these prime cuts available for kosher steak lovers, often in Sephardic communities as well, so more common in Israel, although beef itself is less found in Israel than here. Wolf and Lamb Restaurant in New York has filet mignon on the menu, so next time you're there, you can try it out. Now, what's the connection with all this? The Talmud uses the forbidden nature of this nerve, the Gid HaNasheh, to embark on a whole discussion of many of the foundations of kashrus. Tam ke'ikar, the taste of a thing is like the taste of the thing is like the thing itself. So if you accidentally cook a steak that still has this forbidden part in it, does the whole piece of meat become non-kosher, or just the part that has the taste of the gid, of the nerve? What about the pot that you cooked it in? Doesn't the taste of forbiddenness go into the walls of the pot that you're cooking in? So many essential concepts in kosher food and kosher kitchen vessels. Rabbi Mervis, the esteemed current chief rabbi of the UK, whom we do not quote enough, has an essay on the gid hanasha, this prohibited sciatic nerve, in which he takes the letters that the Torah uses to talk about it. Es gid, just those 5 letters, Aleph Tav, Gimel Yud Daled, and he finds a hint to each of the 4 fast days that commemorate the destruction of the temple. Taf and Aleph are for Tisha B'Av. Gimel is Gimel Tishrei, the fast of Gedalia. Yud is 10, which is the 10th of Teves. And Gid, Gimel Yud Daled, adds up to 17, like in 17th of Tammuz. The connection is actually from Midrash Hanelam, which says that the 4 fast days commemorate the destruction of the temples when our adversaries struck blows that left the Jewish people limping like Jacob after wrestling the angel. When we fast on those days, we're recognizing, taking cognizance of the lessons of history. Because the Jews did teshuvah, writes Rabbi Mervis further, we were saved from what was planned as yet another genocide under Haman and Achashverosh. Instead of a destruction, on Purim we celebrate triumph and salvation. The ideas of tshuva and celebration are connected in the similarity between Purim and the Day of Atonement, which is called Yom HaKippurim, which also means the day which is like Purim. Another foundational book of the tradition of Kabbalah, mysticism, called Sefer Yetzirah, the Book of Creation, finds a connection between each of the 365 days of the year and each of the 365 nerves in the human body. Thus, there's a clear connection, according to that, of the angels wounding this nerve in Jacob's body, and that is said to have wrested control of the 9th day of Av from his descendants. Never been a good day for us. But listen to the explanation from the Chizkuni, Rabbi Chizkiah ben Manoach from France, about 2 generations after Rashi in the 12th century. He says the reason that we don't eat the gid, the reason we don't get the good steaks like filet mignon and all that, is because of how this whole wrestling match with the angel came to be. Remember that Yaakov had made all these preparations in the beginning of the parsha for the looming encounter with Esav, his brother, who probably had it out for him. He divided the family into 2 camps, put the women and children in a safe place, tried to appease his brother with gifts, and he prepared for battle, and he davened. And the night before the encounter, it says, Vayivater Yaakov levado. Yaakov was left alone. Yaakov was left alone? Where were his kids? Where was his family? He was busy trying to protect them. Where was their effort to look after his well-being, protect him? When Jacob was left alone with no escort, no one by his side, that's when this angel, maybe it was Esav's angel, maybe it was somebody else, that's when they wrestled all night, and Yaakov became injured on the sciatic nerve. The Chizkuni says, he hurt your father, and where were you? Drashas Haran, Rabbeinu Nissim of Gerona, reads this irresponsibility back even further into the story. The day that Esav sold his birthright, sold it to his brother Yaakov for a pot of lentils, those lentils will be being prepared as a meal of consolation for Isaac, their father, who was sitting Shiva for his father, Abraham, who had died that very day. Not only did Esav not respect his grandfather, he didn't show up to the Levaya, he was out hunting in the field. This grandfather, the Zayda, who taught him when he was a little boy, he ate the food that was intended for his father, that was supposed to be a consolation meal while he was mourning, sitting Shiva. This is when Yaakov comes to believe that he's entitled to the birthright because his older brother has no respect for father or grandfather. And yet, at this very moment in our story this week, Yaakov himself is left alone without his own kids. It's a bit of a comeuppance to Yaakov, causing him to ask if he himself succeeded in instilling reverence for his parents in his own offspring. And yet, And yet, we never focus on the injuries that we sustain as a people. Victimhood is not our focus. Rather, as it says at the very end of last week's Parsha, Vayakov halach ledarko, Yaakov went on his way. Jacob continued along his path. This week, Yaakov's name is changed to Yisrael, and the journey continues. We, Israel, continue on our way toward a better future, towards good things. Shabbat Shalom.